Well, welcome to Black Men Speak, one of the best podcasts that highlights ordinary Black men doing extraordinary things. I am your host, Keith Dent. We're in a new month. Happy November. So it's great to be here. One thing, when I was growing up, I loved reading the Alfred Hitchcock mystery books. They had titles like The Mystery of the Invisible Dog and The Mystery of the Sinister Scarecrow. And it would pull me in and make me think. Every page felt like a clue, every character a possible suspect. But what I didn't realize is that it taught me how to pay attention to details, connecting the dots, and to think critically. The suspense kept me hooked, but lessons went deeper. Also during that time, there were mystery writers that I was not introduced to, like Rudolph Fisher, who wrote The Conjure Man Dies back in 1932. It's considered one of the first mystery novels by an African-American writer. Or Chester Himes, whose Harlem-based detective novels featured Coffin Ed Johnson and Gravedigger Jones in the 50s and 60s. It was a combination of hard-boiled crime fiction and unflinching social documentary about race and urban life. But as I got older, my love for books never wavered, and especially mystery novels. And that's when I discovered Walter Mosley. Walter is one of America's most versatile and acclaimed writers with over 60 books spanning mystery, literary fiction, science fiction, and even nonfiction. His work has been translated into 25 languages and has profoundly deepened our understanding of Black life in America. From his debut novel, Devil in a Blue Dress, which introduced the unforgettable Easy Rawlins, Mosley has created indelible other characters such as Socrates Fortlow. I just love saying that, by the way, Socrates Fortlow, and I say it in a low voice. Ptolemy Gray and Louis Norman McGill, among others. His books have been adapted for film and television, including productions starring Denzel Washington, Samuel Jackson, and Lawrence Fishburne. Mosley is the recipient of Mystery Writers of America's Grand Master Award, the National Book Award, Medal for Distinguished Contribution to American Letters, PEN America's Lifetime Achievement Award, and numerous other honors. Beyond writing, he's established a published certificate program at CUNY to increase diversity in publishing, and has worked as writer and producer on the acclaimed series like Snowfall and The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray. Today, we're going to discuss his latest Easy Rawlins mystery, Gray Dawn. It's the 17th installment in a series that has captivated readers over 3 decades. We explore how Easy has evolved from post-war LA to present day, the moral complexities of characters, and Mosley's unwavering commitment to telling stories that reflect the full humanity of Black men. And I'm really excited because I got to meet Walter in Jersey City, and that's where I saw his book, and I read it. It was fantastic, and can't wait to chat. So Walter, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and just get right to it. You know, you've been writing Easy Rawlins for over 3 decades now, starting with Devil in a Blue Dress in 1990. And he represented a certain kind of Black masculinity. He was intelligent, resilient, morally complex, but also deeply human. So how did you think about masculinity when crafting your male characters?
I guess that's the thing that I didn't really realize when I started writing Easy. It wasn't until about the 3rd book, it dawned upon me that I was writing about Black male heroes. And the thing about that is it's all kinds of different things. You could be Easy. You could be Mouse. You could be Jackson Blue or Fearless Jones or John the Bartender, or, there's so many people who have so many different ways of approaching the world and living in that world. And all of them, to one degree or another, are heroic, no matter who they are. I mean, Jackson Blue is certainly he's one of the most powerful economic forces in Los Angeles because he's the number 2 in this giant insurance company. It's a French insurance company. And one of the things that, Jackson is a coward and he's kind of like a dog and he's done a lot of, not such good things in his life. But if you're a Black man or woman and applying for a job, he tells the people up front, downstairs in employment, he says, if they come in and they're not white people, I want to see them. I just want to talk to them. I want to see what these people are made from. And so he's helping people. And so to a great degree, he's very heroic, even though he may not be such a great guy. He's doing things. Easy, of course, is another kind of black male hero. But no, all of my characters are normal people. They're like everyday people. They're the kind of people you would meet. But because there's an onus on them to be successful, to do what's right, they have to work so hard at what they do that they seem superhuman, they seem heroic, they seem all kinds of things, but they're not really. They're just like everybody else. It's just that if you're Black in America in the middle of the 20th century, you have to be nearly perfect. You cannot make any mistakes, because if you do, that's going to cost you 10 times as much as it would cost anybody else.
Right. Absolutely. And so 17 novels, that's a lot of novels to kind of focus on one character or a series of characters. So what keeps you coming back to that character? And we'll kind of get into it a little later, but how do you try to keep them fresh?
Well, I don't try to keep them fresh. Now, okay, there's 17 books about Easy, but I've published 62 books. So there's all kinds of other things I talk about and people I talk about. I love writing about a character, and if I find myself getting stale, I just stop doing that. I don't write about that anymore. I start writing about something else. Now that might be just at that moment, or maybe it's a character that I don't write about anymore. But it's not hard to keep it fresh, because Easy's life has been the first book was 1939. The newest book is 1972. So Easy has been, he's just been, slogging along all that time, trying to make something of himself and of the world that he's living in.
Yeah, and he's reached kind of I guess since it is 1972, he's kind of reached a new stage in his life. He has a thriving detective agency. He has a home in the hills. So how do you approach writing a character who's kind of aged and evolved over such a long period of time? What does the particular phase of Easy's life allow you to explore that maybe you didn't do in the early stages of writing?
Well, I think, when you're younger, you're braver, partially out of ignorance, partially because, you're stronger. There's a kind of a confidence that you carry with you. There's a future that you're working toward, that's your own future. Whereas when you're in your 50s and 60s and on from there, you're not so much thinking about your future. That's one thing, and you're also wondering about the future of your children, of other people's children, of young people, and also even of older people. Somebody who's they're getting old. They don't get around as fast as much as they did anymore. They might need a little help figuring this or that out in order to live. And so you're more a social creature than like a one-off creature of in your 20s and early 30s.
Yeah, right. Okay, absolutely. And so that does segue nicely into the fact that, and I don't want to try to give a lot of information away for those who read the book, because it was a great book, by the way. But you introduced your first female detective at the agency. So what inspired you to bring this character into Easy's world, and what dynamics does she bring to the story itself?
Well, that's a difficult thing. He has an assistant. Her name is Niska. And Niska she's been working for Easy and his two partners for a moment. She's been an assistant. She's going to college. She's still figuring out where she's going in life. And this is 1972. And so one of the big things going on in America is feminism. That there are women, of all, ages, races, religions are beginning to say, wait a second, things have changed in America. It used to be that the man could, be having a job and the woman could take care of the home and raise the children, and that was enough to have a future. But we have to go to work now. And if we have to go to work, you have to treat us as equals, not as, you might have treated somebody 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or 100 years ago. And that's it's an interesting moment. And Easy is running through this. All kinds of women are appearing in this novel who are responsible for themselves and the people around them. You have Mama Joe. You have Mary, who's married to the the criminal of criminals, married to the number 3 policeman. You have John, the bartender's fiance, who's helping him figure out his life. You have all kinds of womanhood that is seeing itself differently than it had previously. And so she's not a detective yet. Niska has asked Easy in the previous book, Farewell Amethystin, he said, I'd like to learn how to be a detective. And he says, well, okay, we'll see how in his head, he said, I can't even imagine you being a detective. I can't even imagine a woman detective, because of the history he has. He said, but the thing that makes it Easy different is he says, but if you want to do it, I'm willing to, give you a chance to see if you can do it. And I think that to know where she's going, I have no idea where she's going to go in the future of this series. But right now, she's a person who can help Easy do things. He's going to use anybody he can to get what he needs to get and get where he needs to go. So and that's just it. It's because one of the things that I'm doing as I go through this stuff, I'm addressing the period, the age. Mouse has a new girlfriend. She's not only Vietnamese, she was, when she was in Vietnam, a Viet Cong, and she's very serious. And Mouse, that's perfect for Mouse, because you can't get too criminal for Mouse. And so he's like, okay, well, you Viet Cong, that's good. You my girlfriend, let's start a family. And it's all of it is you see the power, that thing during the late 60s, early 70s, the women who were part of the North Vietnamese army and the women who were part of Viet Cong, they worked side by side with men doing everything that they did. And this is something, this is in a way just talking about that period of time. And Easy is that has that mindset that he doesn't necessarily believe in these things, but he's willing to give them a chance in his experience.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I did find that quite interesting, and just also the way you weaved it into the book. So and I have to say, I have read some, not all of the mysteries, but when you think about weaving history, real history into the books, how much do you do a lot of research or kind of decide what you want to weave in depending on the times? Because of course, since it's set in LA, there's so much that goes on there, and things are changing, of course, rapidly. So how do you decide what you want to weave in?
It's so hard. Number one, I hate doing research.
Okay.
Research is so funny because nothing. Because no matter how much you learn, at some point or another, you're going to have to make a decision on whether it's true or not, what impact that it has on culture or not, what's right, what's wrong. All of it is so difficult. But of course, so I think that I'm more talking about general trends than I'm talking about individuals who might exist historically. In the last book, I talking a lot about Angela Davis, but only because she was at some very important moments just around that time. But on the whole, even when I was talking about her, it's the guys in his in his office are talking about Angela, and they have their own opinion on what she did and what she didn't. Some of them don't like her. Some of them think, well, this is great. She's standing up for the black man, and it goes, all that stuff. And that's what's so interesting to me. The idea of the time, not so much the specific, details of that time.
Okay. And of course, the title Gray Dawn kind of suggest a little ambiguity, uncertainty in the title, but also dawn is almost, it's like the beginning of the day. So it's almost a contradiction. What made you come up with that title?
Well, that is the beginning of the novel. It's a gray dawn. Izzy just wakes up, phone is ringing from far away. His daughter, who's not home right in the summer, she's 16 years old, and she's studying at the American Institute for Foreign Study in France, in Dijon. He's living in the ultimate gated community. The woman, there's 6 houses on top of this mountain. One is lived in by a woman who owns the entire mountain. Nobody else lives on that mountain. It's those people in those houses and the 5 Sicilian security guards. Right. And the only one way to get up is by a funicular. It's like he's completely separate, a beautiful place. He doesn't have to pay for it. He's having anybody else would say, this life is great. I mean, I have made it. I am okay. But the thing is that his life was, I was a black man living among black people in New Iberia, Louisiana, in Fifth Ward, Houston, Texas, in Watson, Los Angeles. I was working with black people, and I was helping people. Sometimes they come and ask me to help them, and they can't pay me, but they could have their wife make me food every week for like 3 months, and and sometimes people do me other kinds of favors, and that was the life where he that was when he felt most alive, and that gray dawn, he's realizing that even though he has everything that somebody else might want, he doesn't have what he needs. And that is that's a sad moment for him.
Yes, interesting, and that kind of leads to a question which I hadn't thought of. But since you kind of went through his history, does it make when you come across maybe someone that's encountered you for the first time in your books, especially anyone from the Easy Rawlins series, does it make it challenging for, I guess, readers who hadn't read any of the older books to kind of get a sense of really his character or your style? Or is it, I guess, just as fresh no matter what book you pick up?
It doesn't matter. Every book is completely contained. The stories, the ideas. Some of the characters come from other books, but or from other, from previous books, but that doesn't matter because when you meet them, you know everything about them. You find it out. I think that if you read this book and then you go back and read, some book in the middle, a Little Yellow Dog or something, you'll have a different relationship with that earlier book than you might have if you just read it first. But the books stand on their own. So it doesn't really matter. People can decide to do what they want.
Gotcha. Okay. So beyond the mysteries, you've written science fiction, young adult novels, literary fiction. I think The Last Day of Ptolemy Gray, I really like that. How do you navigate between these different genres? What does each kind of genre allow you to do or explore as a writer?
Well, that's the thing. Genre does what you're trying to write about will often inform the genre you're writing in. When I wrote Blue Light, which is my first, science fiction kind of book, I'm not a very spiritual person. However, that said, I believe in the soul because I feel like I have a soul. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to write a book about somebody, not necessarily on purpose, discovering his soul. And so I'm not going to write a science fiction book. I mean, like a mystery, like let's say you write a mystery, guy comes in, Mr. Rawlins, I think I got a soul. Do you think you can find it for me? That's not going to work, right?
Right.
And so that needed to be a science fiction book. Recently I wrote a book, because there's so many Black characters in the world of film, especially, but also in literature, where there's only certain types of Black men who are ever talked about, Black women too. And so I decided to write about a whole bunch of Black people who don't fit into those molds. That's when I came to the short story collection, The Awkward Black Man.
Yeah.
So it often depends on what I'm trying to get at right then.
Oh, I see. Okay, makes sense. That was a good book about The Awkward Black Man. There were just so many complex stories, and I think I told you when I met. Oh, I wish I would have brought that book and written down all the notes, because there was some characters that were just like really mind-boggling. I can't remember. I think the last story. Well, I don't want to go through it because I don't want to mess it up. But I love that book, by the way, because of the fact there were different complex characters in the book that you would not really think about that would be written about.
When you find because there are people who are I'm writing a second collection of The Awkward Black Man, but you find characters who they aren't at all like you'll have a guy, the people are hiring at this bank, and he goes there and they say, well, so here, when you fill out the thing, you didn't fill out race here. We kind of need you to, because we're hiring African Americans right now. We want to make sure. And he said, well, Africa is a continent. Well, what am I, Egyptian, South African? Do I come from Nigeria? He said, I'm not how could I be an Arab? I mean, look at this person and say, are you a Chinese American? Well, there's China and there's you. Okay, fine. But I am not an African American, and I refuse to be called that. And they don't hire him because of that. They said, well, but if you can't say you are something, we can't accept you. But to have somebody who has these really powerful beliefs that are like minuscule to anybody else. It's not robbing a bank or blowing up a ship or flying to the moon. It's just somebody saying, I don't even know what country my people came from, and you want me to call me, something else, a continent American,
Right. In your, I guess, throughout your career, you've been unflinching in depicting the lives of Black men navigating systems designed to work against them. So from Easy Rawlins to post-war LA, the contemporary struggles in your, I guess, King Oliver series. So do you feel a kind of a responsibility to tell these stories, and how has that evolved over the course of your career?
One thing I realized a long time ago was that if you weren't a part of the popular fiction of any era or age, if you weren't singing songs, if you weren't starring in a movie or writing movies, if you weren't writing a book, a novel, or a character in a book or a novel, and if your people are not there, then you won't be there. You won't be part of history, because history is a very right now kind of thing. And so, when I was a kid, there were no Black people on television. There were no Black novels being sold. There were Black singers and dancers, but they were on race stations. There are people. Most people said, they never heard of a Black doctor or a Black president or a Black, anything. And what's so important is to make sure that people exist, no matter what they are, no matter what they're doing. Is that, but those people exist. And I think that's one of the reasons I was writing. So I'm saying these people who I know and love exist. And here's their story. And that makes you a part of history.
Yes.
Not just absolutely. Me, everybody who does that. Go on.
Yeah. And so I guess in 2025, what stories aren't being told about Black men or Black characters in general? And does that concern you, or what gaps are there that really are a concern for you?
Well,
as a writer?
Honestly, the opposite question is an easier one to answer. What is covered? The thing is, if you all of a sudden right now started writing about an innovative Black plumber, I promise you, it would be the first time it ever happened. If you write about if you write about a Black soldier who decides to defect to North Korea, I think there was one. But the thing is, that man's story would be the first time you ever heard of that thing. I mean, the idea is there are so many stories that have gone untold. There are so many potential dramas and comedies that we haven't paid attention to. That, I mean, it's kind of endless. I look at the books that I write, and one of the things, I don't know how good they are or they aren't, but I do know that most of them, it's the first time kind of thing, or the second time, something like that.
Right. Well, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I do the podcast, because there are just so many stories that we just don't hear, and they just need to be told. And it doesn't have to be like anything earth shattering. It just be maybe you saved your entire town or something. It's just like a story that is just fascinating and we need to hear about. And I think one thing that's great about the books that you write is that the characters are complex, and it just makes us Black men, or just Black characters in general, feel more human. We're not superheroes all the time, or super athletes or entertainers. We're just humans trying to make our way in the world like everybody else.
Yeah, and that isn't necessarily, a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people don't know that. They don't, even if they don't think they're not going to say that Black people or anybody else is inhuman, but they might say, well, I never even would think of that. You mean he's having that problem with his children? Same kind of problem I have with my children in a slightly different way? Are the mistakes he's learning from, or the same kind of mistakes that I learned from? That becomes the thing. Because people read the story and say, oh wow, I'm like this. And of course, if you're Black people reading the story, when I first started writing, on the whole, I didn't have a big Black male audience when I first started writing. A lot of Black women.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
A lot of Black women, but not a lot of Black men, because Black men had already read books with Black people in them, and they were nothing like anybody they ever heard of, and their value systems were, kind of like mainstream value systems, and we know that there's a difference there. That ultimately they might be the same, but getting there is a much different path, and it took a while before Black men started saying, well, and then, there was a movie with Denzel that helped.
Yeah, I was going to say, did that help?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I wouldn't have thought that, well, I guess I would have, because we unfortunately don't read as much as we should. So,
and a lot of Black men will tell you, the only thing I read is nonfiction, because, I want to know the truth. I'm not interested in somebody making up some lies. Of course, most nonfiction.
I never thought of it that way.
But most nonfiction is comprised of lies, because it's almost impossible to tell an objective truth. That you can't deny at some other point. I always tell people, you got a guy, he wants a biography of Ronald Reagan, and he goes to a far right person says, I want you to write about Ronald Reagan. He goes to a far left person and says, I want you to write about Ronald Reagan. I promise you, those books will have exactly the same facts in them, so-called facts, but they will be completely different books. The person on the right he's gonna like Ronald Reagan. The person on the left, that man was our enemy.
Oh wow, yeah, that's I never thought of it that way. Yeah, I guess you're right.
People start talking about the truth. I mean, in China, whenever one dynasty, overturned the other, the first thing they did was hire people to rewrite history. That's the first thing they always did.
Mm.
And so we know that history, in China at least, is always a fiction.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So for our, I guess, aspiring, writers looking to kind of get into the medium and find their voice, what are some of the things that they really should be doing, I guess, to hone their craft? And you can also just base that maybe on your own journey. What would you have wanted to know back then when you started?
It's a very interesting. There are some things that you have to do. The most important thing you have to do is write. You just have to write. In my understanding of it, you have to write every day, every single day of the week. People say to me, well, but what about when I'm on vacation? I said, well, write in the morning and when you're on vacation too. Why not? Because writing is it's who you are. It's not your job. And so that's a really important thing. Another thing is to learn how to rewrite. And that is, once you've written down something, then you go over it and critically say, well, does this work? Does that work? And there's 100 different things that you might be looking for. Another thing, I think for most or many writers, is to find other writers that, to find a community of writers where, because most people, when you were saying before, most people don't read. I mean, they just don't. And so they're not interested. They're not really. You tell them you're a writer, and they get nervous that you might ask them to read something. So they say, "Well, okay. What else do you think about that? Them Dodgers, man? They just won the series, And it said, "Well, yeah, I know about that, but I'm talking about writing." He said, "No, I'm not interested." So if you know other writers, that will help. It bring in criticism that might be useful. And other than that, it's who you are. I mean, you write, you look at it, you try to do things with it. Maybe you send out to little magazines that publish writers. Maybe you try to get something to if you one of your friends has a friend who's an agent and wants to look at your books. It's very difficult and it's very easy.
Gotcha. So does AI scare you as a writer?
Well, I was a computer programmer for many years, and people come to me and they say, talk about AI, and I'm like, well, what do you mean AI? And they say, well, these computers, they can talk like make a person talk like this, make a picture that looks like me. I say, man, it's only AI if you say, let's say that your AI name is Augur. You go, hey, Augur. Yes. I want you to call Betty Joe for me. He says, no, sir, I'm not going to do that. So what do you mean you're not going to do it? He said, I'm not going to call Betty Joe for you because she said she didn't want to talk to you anymore. And every time somebody doesn't want to talk to you and you get in touch with them again, it just hurts you. You get sad. You don't go to work. And it's not good. So I'm not going to do it. And that's AI. That's real intelligence that makes its own decisions. Right now, we have computers that do things that people tell them to do in very sophisticated ways. Don't get me wrong, but it's sophisticated. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. Now, and all right, fine. Are they going to steal my writing and my writing style and this and that? I don't think so.
Right.
And if that happens someday, okay, that happens someday. There's nothing I can do or say about it. One of the things is before 1914, knowledge doubled every 100 years. So if you knew two things in 1800, by the time 1900 came around, you know four things. And then 2000, 8 things. That. But in 1914, everything changed because of the war and because of the need of technology in war, and knowledge doubled between 1914 and 1917. And now, at today's day, knowledge doubles every 10 months. The number of things that everybody that's known in the world will double in 10 months. We're moving ahead at this breakneck speed. Am I afraid of where technology is going to bring me, which is really the question? Why am I going to be afraid of something that I can't stop? You know, there's something that nobody will stop. Technology is going to move ahead, and it's going to change us drastically. Anybody who's my age, 73, anybody my age, they remember a time when there was only like maybe 2 or 3 electronic items in your house. I had a radio, a TV, and a telephone. That's it. You know, nothing. There was no, yeah, you know, and now I have 1,000 things in one room. Everything is done, you know, by electronics. Everything is, you know, organized and cooked and studied and calling emergency. You know, if you make a certain sound, all of that stuff, you know. But that's what you're talking about. I mean, AI is, you know, it's kind of like an umbrella for all that. But so no, I'm not worried that things are going to change. I know things are going to change.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot. And,
okay.
And maybe a little bit of challenge, but if you had the Mount Rushmore of your books, and you can take all of them, what 4 of them would be on it, and why?
It's such a hard question.
I know. I mean, you have so many. I knew it put you. And don't think hard. Just what would come to the top of your head.
What do you mean? I have to think hard. What are you talking about? Don't think hard. Yeah, I probably can't tell you exactly. I would probably go through pick out the most 4 genres.
Okay.
And I would pick out one from each one of those.
Okay.
You know, one from, you know, literary fiction, one from mystery fiction, one from erotic fiction, and maybe one from short stories, because short stories are different than novels. So that would, you know, show a different side of me. But I don't know which ones I would choose from.
Which ones? Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll do it. I'll pick them out. That's pretty cool. Thank you for that. Well, let me ask it maybe in a different way, not necessarily. If you look back on your body of work, what books or characters had the most significance in your, I guess, journey, and why?
Well, there's no question that the book that had the most impact on my existence as a writer is Devil in a Blue Dress. And talking about Devil in a Blue Dress is a very interesting thing, especially going along with your question. Devil in a Blue Dress was the first book I got published. It's the second book I wrote, but it was the first one I got published. And it has, you know, like all books do, flaws. And if you look at all the books I've written since Devil in a Blue Dress, technically, they've gotten better and better and better. Sometimes the stories are wonderful, sometimes they're not, but technically they've gotten better and better and better and better. So now I'm at this 62, right? And I'm saying, well, look at 62. Now, 62 must be a lot better than Devil in a Blue Dress, because look at all those books in between. And I said, well, yeah, but technically, my most recent book, Gray Dawn, is like a much better constructed novel, but it's not a better book. Devil in a Blue Dress is a powerful novel. And, you know, other writers might be able to say, well, what's the best? And they choose, you know, how, you know, technical you were. But people reading books, you ask a guy, what's the best book you ever read? He's maybe 25. He said, oh, Winnie the Pooh, no question. That book, when I read about Winnie the Pooh, I was there. I was, and so he said, but
Yeah.
Macbeth by Shakespeare is so much better. I said, well, yeah, it is better. He said, but I don't love it anymore, than I do Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh said, you should be reading me. You should be reading me,
Right.
And I, so that's kind of how I feel. So definitely Devil was great for me. And also it was great, it introduced, my writing to the world, and people liked it. They like it today. It's the book that sold the most of all my books. That's for sure.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So you say what was the flaw that was in it that
it's just that, the book works. But the idea of the mystery, or the idea of a character, or the depth of Easy, or Mouse, or Jackson Blue, it was not as it wasn't as strong. But it doesn't matter that it wasn't, because me reading, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about lately is reading. And when somebody buys a book of mine and sits down and reads it, they're reading, it's very abstract reading. You look at black letters on a white page, and from that, all of these things, places, people, actions, sounds, life, death, all of it appears in front of you in your mind. And you're creating that yourself. You're creating life. And so if I came up to a person who just read Devil in a Blue Dress and loved it, and I said, well, his technique in an extended metaphor in Black Betty is much better. The person reading Devil right now who loves it, they'll look at me and go, huh? Because that stuff doesn't matter to them. What matters is the story they made up when they were reading the book. And that's the best book allows the reader free reign to create. And all these other things that a writer might say is better or worse is kind of meaningless.
Yeah, and I love the fact when you read, you can create all of these things. Like you create sounds, colors. So why do you think that we just don't read more?
Well, I think that one of the things when knowledge doubles as fast as it does, you don't have time to keep up. I asked whoever it was, ChatGPT or AI.
Oh, you did?
I asked the other day, I said, how many books are published in a year? And the answer that came back was 8 books are published every minute.
Wow.
Now, that's very possible. There are 8 billion people in the world. That's really possible. Now, one thing I know, back in the 16th century and the 15th century, you could have if you were rich, you could have a bookshelf with every important book ever written right there, right, on a wall in your house. That's how many books. The only thing you could do is read those books over and over again, which is very important, by the way, reading books more than once. And so now there's no way even to get into it. You don't even know. So, well, I read one book, and in that time I read that book, 182,000 books were published. And so now I have to read the next book. Another 182,000 books got published. You feel pressured. And that's the thing you shouldn't feel. You should take your time, do what you can, and pay close attention to what you're doing, because that's all that you can ever do.
Well, Walter, this was fantastic. I am so glad that I got a chance to go to Word in Jersey City and to meet you and to sit down, because that's, I guess, if you are a reader, that's always a kind of a dream to, after you finish it, to sit down with the author and at least talk a little bit about the book, in a one-on-one setting. In a group setting, it's a little hard, but in a one-on-one setting like this was fantastic. So thank you for that. So I do have one more question. It's always a surprise for my guests because, we as Black men, we work so hard with our families and our professions and just what we're into. We don't necessarily sit and think about my next question. But the question is, as a Black man, how are you feeling?
Well, you know, I mean, I'll start by saying that I feel pretty good.
Good.
I feel pretty good, but I'm aware of how many, of my brothers and sisters are locked up and channeled down a path that's almost inescapable. That, well, you committed this crime, you did this thing, you're going to be in prison, and a lot of other, people who have been cordoned off by class. But I believe that the way our country and a lot of our world is going, that we have been trained in a 400-year history to understand what is and is not pertinent in life itself. I feel like when I see people that are out there, marching and talking and saying, we've been cheated by these Black people, these brown people, all these people of other colors, and I know I can say to that person, I said, look, man, you and me and everybody else in this room got the same problem. We got to eat, we got to have a place to sleep, we got to watch our elders grow old, we have to watch our children under the barbs and arrows. What we have experienced, you are now experiencing. And us working together is going to solve that problem. Now, it certainly isn't happening yet. But when I say that, I know I'm speaking the truth. And I'm not speaking truth that about a conflict. I don't need to have conflict with anybody. They might need to have it with me. I can't help that. But I don't need to have conflict with anybody. I'm saying, look, you and I, we're the same. You don't think so, but you and I, we are the same. And that knowledge, and a knowledge I know I can share with any Black man or woman in this country, makes me know that I have some knowledge that's not fading away. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I feel, well, I'm in the best possible position in a bad situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Very astute observation. Walter, I just want to thank you for joining today. Pick up his new book, The Gray Dawn, fascinating book, or any of the other 62 books that he has written, because he is a voice that needs to be read and really just listened to, because it's wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you. It was great.
Black Men Speak was written, produced, and edited by me, Keith Dent. You can find previous episodes wherever you get your favorite podcasts. If this is your first time discovering the show, or you're a Black Men Speak podcast fan, make sure you like and subscribe. We always like to end the show with a quote. And this one comes from Walter Mosley's memoir, What Next? A Memoir Toward World Peace. Every day that we wake up is a good day. Every breath that we take is filled with hope for a better day. Every word that we speak is a chance to change what is bad into something good. This is Keith Dent from the Black Men Speak podcast. Peace.